Let's talk about lifestyle interventions and modifications to reduce disease risk.
There's essentially just different qualities of a diet that's going to be sort of anti-atherosclerotic and then pro-atherosclerotic.
Whether it's to reduce cholesterol, whether it's to improve your diabetic state, exercise to build muscle is like a deposit in the bank that's going to earn interest later on down the road.
So I think nutrition is such an easy bang for your buck in terms of your time investment and in terms of the resources that you can give your body to help prevent cardiovascular disease and atherosclerotic progression.
Back to another episode of the Vitality Code podcast, powered by Vitality Telehealth Medicine for all your telehealth needs. I am Dr. Jason Farah alongside my co-host, Dr. Jeffrey Farah and Dr. Chester Sokolowski. Fellas, how you doing?
Holding up, buddy. Cholesterol.
Kind of crickets there for a second. I kind of got worried.
Who goes? Me, you.
In this cholesterol series, guys, we've discussed what cholesterol is. We've talked about how it contributes to atherosclerosis and cardiovascular disease. We touched on pharmacological interventions to improve your lipid profile and reduce disease risk, such as, of course, the old statins. But we talked about more novel agents or newer agents, including PCSK9 inhibitors, some peptides, glutathione, carnosine, etc., and then Vascepa, EPA, fish oil, etc., niacin, even fenofibrate, different items. This current podcast, I want to talk to you more about kind of the good old-fashioned stuff that, I don't know, to me, I mean, it's where you are in life and what you've been through and what your, personal health is, that informs your current thinking. But for me, it's been really eye-opening to see what lifestyle interventions alone can do, even though I knew it. But seeing it in yourself, it's just different. So let's talk about lifestyle interventions and modifications to reduce disease risk, because that's what we're talking about here. Is we can't eliminate all of it, but we can reduce our risk, right? So Chester, what, in your opinion, what are some of the best lifestyle behaviors to modify to reduce disease risk? And then we'll go to Jeff.
I'll start with my favorite. Now, my PhD is exercise physiology, but if I had to make one sort of lifestyle intervention to correct my CVD, it's not exercise, it would be nutrition. Nutrition interventions, in particular, we have a really good diet quality filled with antioxidants. This is going to help sort of reduce that oxidative stress, which can improve your endothelial function. That's sort of the chicken or the egg. This is the first portion, the egg portion, before the chicken hatches, before you get your atherosclerosis, before the LDL plaque gets in your arteries. This is going to tackle the oxidative stress, improve the endothelial function if you're having an antioxidant-rich diet. Additionally, tell
us real quick, what are antioxidants and why do they matter for atherogenesis and atherosclerosis?
So we have molecules that can harm us. We could be reactive oxygen species. They're essentially a molecule that's unstable, if you will. It sort of has an unbalanced number of electrons. An antioxidant is a molecule that can help stabilize that molecule by sort of balancing the electrons. And then, therefore, the molecule that was unstable that could interact with various cells, various proteins, and inhibit their function is now neutralized. So you have a more stable, sort of safe homeostatic environment. So It's essentially a molecule that could affect other molecules and neutralize sort of the bad guy molecules, if you will, in your body.
Are we talking vitamins? What are we talking?
Yeah, vitamins and minerals are great sources, but various foods have sources of antioxidants. Some of your oils, your extra virgin olive oil, your extra virgin macadamia nut oil, your flaxseed oils, your avocados, potatoes, things like that. They can all sort of have antioxidants affiliated with those various foods, and they would be highly advantageous to incorporate into your diet. And another reason why I'm sort of on the pro-nutrition bandwagon, obviously there's the dietary cholesterol that you can eat, but remember, out of the total cholesterol, 70% or so is endogenous, you make it, and 30% is what you eat. So you can't really modify too much in terms of your total cholesterol, in terms of your diet and what you eat. But what you can really do with your diet is alter your body composition in terms of having less adipose tissue, less body fat, and sort of more body fat is associated with more deleterious health effects. You could see some of the pro-inflammatory environments. You could see some insulin resistance. So nutrition is going to be the big bang for your buck to improve your body composition, in particular, help limit your fat loss. It's much easier to reduce calorie intake by 300 calories through your diet than it is to go hop on a treadmill for 30 minutes and try to go burn 300 calories on the treadmill. So I think nutrition is such an easy bang for your buck in terms of your time investment and in terms of the resources that you can give your body to help prevent cardiovascular disease and atherosclerotic progression.
Okay.
Man, that diet's been the toughest for me as I have gotten older. It's been my nemesis. It didn't matter as much. I know Jason's going to get me on this because he loves to talk about how I used to eat when we were in high school.
You used to be a problem. Behaviorally, it was. I guess what you mean to say is like it didn't
show up. It didn't show up objectively as much. Now it's like, dang, I have horrible habits.
My man would come home.
I know he's going to bury me.
My man would come home and take off the football gear. He had the full-on back knee going, and then he would go to the freezer and grab the Bluebell or whatever it was, Moose Tracks or whatever. But now, I don't know what.
Schwann's mint chip
by the gallon. Just go down.
Not a gallon.
Oh yes, or half gallon at least. It wasn't like a quart. It was like a half gallon at least, and just spoon, half gallon, TV, boom. That's the.
I would mix a little Guthrie's in there. I would mix a little Guthrie's.
The gut box, yeah.
Fried chicken.
Fried chicken with the secret Guthrie sauce.
Dude, if I could have one meal, it would be my Guthrie's. Love it. Yeah, so diet has been tough, and now that I'm of an aged population, I'm a mature man, those habits have come back to haunt me.
Have they really?
It's just the hardest for me to change. I can exercise. You can tell me, let's go work out 3 times a day. Cool. Got it. I've done it my whole life. I have those habits. It's not hard for me. It's not a big thing to get over.
And I hate to even say this because we don't want to give anybody an out, but I mean, I don't know. You're a pretty fit guy. I can't see what's under that beard, but I mean, just looking at you, I mean, people say,
how many chins are under there?
Yeah. Your skin's glowing. You got your bright eyed. Look at you. You're a beautiful specimen there. You got good blood work. I mean, what would you try to change? What outcome are you trying to affect other than you just know it's the right thing to do?
I think I know it's the right thing to do, but as I am turning later 40s, I'm starting to actively plan for my 60s, and I see my nutrition as my weakest link of things that are catching up to me, and I'm having the hardest time calibrating. I'm becoming more acutely concerned with my diabetes state. I want to make sure that I am not setting myself up for long-term dysfunction, endothelial health dysfunction. And so, but that's been the hardest for me and I don't know if it's just everyone has their sort of thing that's tough for them, whether it's diet or exercise, but for me, the diet has been the toughest. It's also toughest for me as a physician to educate patients. It takes a lot of time. It takes someone like a Chester to sit down and discuss and spend the time with them and back and forth and multiple appointments. And I think a lot of doctors don't have that at their disposal even if they did know about it, don't have that time at their disposal to work with the patient as such.
And Chester lives the lifestyle too, and sticks to it. Have you always been that disciplined, Chester? Were you just a disciplined guy growing up, or something you developed, or is there some other explanation to why you've been able to stick to your nutrition and exercise regimens?
I knew when I was 5 years old, my dad let me watch The Predator, which is not an ideal movie for a 5-year-old.
Yes, it is.
How was that?
Yes, it is, Chester.
Man, get the chopper.
It should have been Rambo. Is what it should have been.
Yes.
My kid's going to be 6 before he watches The Predator. But pretty much the second I saw that handshake between Arnold Schwarzenegger and
Carl Weathers.
Okay, I'm going to be a bodybuilder when I grow up.
You remember that, really?
Oh, yeah, like that's what triggered it. So I would come home from second grade and try to do like push-ups and sit-ups and chin-ups, and I would like chase it down with like Reese's ice cream and lunch, but I was always motivated to look like that. And my lifestyle and education have sort of put me on a trajectory to learn some of these things to how to achieve that physique, but I've always had that not innate, but very young desire to achieve something like that in terms of a physique. And then, as I discovered, because I was eating a whole bunch of stuff that I should not have been eating in college, especially when you get that meal plan. You get the Philly cheesesteaks unlimited. I gained, the freshman 15. That was all good. But you just feel better when you put great nutrients in your body. And that manifests itself into better sleep, into better workouts, into more libido. Essentially, you optimize your health when you're putting the healthiest nutrients you can eat. And we also do have objective measures in terms of, hey, this group had whole grains and this group had refined grains. And then at the end of 6 weeks, there's body composition changes. There's differences in the thermic effect of food. So you burn more calories digesting and absorbing the cleaner foods, the whole foods. So not only do you feel better in terms of your subjective measures, but we can say definitively, objectively, there's going to be differences in body composition if you're going to have more of a cleaner diet rather than if it fits your macro style diet where anything goes as long as you're hitting, your protein, you can have your donuts and whey. Like, no. There's going to be differences within the nutrient quality that are going to develop and also how you feel.
How long have you been eating clean, quote unquote?
Ooh.
How many years?
Well, the thing is, I've always had the goal of growing muscle. And when you grow muscle, you have a little bit more leeway for cheat meals. For example, I can lose weight on 48.
Vulcan, baby.
Yeah, I can lose weight on 4,800 calories. My maintenance is 5,200 calories right now.
Jeez.
Yeah, and I'm not I'm 7,000 steps a day. That's not crazy. I'm not pounding cardio or anything like that. So I've always strived to eat clean, but with the more muscle mass that you have, you get a little bit more of a leeway. So you can have some dirtier meals, some cheat meals, if you will. But again, once you're comfortable with your nutrition plan, I don't like to call it a diet. I like to call it more of a nutrition plan, a nutrition lifestyle. Once you're comfortable with that, you enjoy the foods you're eating. You enjoy feeling good based on those foods. And then you get into a routine. And ultimately, I pretty much eat the same exact thing every day if it's a training day or a rest day. And I just enjoy those foods I eat. I enjoy the way they make me feel, how the performance they allow in the gym. You just get in the habit of feeling good. You get in the habit of feeling good. And you want to repeat the habit of feeling good. So you continuously feel good. So you continuously repeat those behaviors and you kind of eat clean, I guess, as long as you can. But again, there are certain times where I can go cheat meal it and I have that little extra leeway and it's a little bit easier.
I remember, Chester, your Facebook feed when you were moving in. I remember specifically being
get caught on social media.
Yeah, almost a gap. And hold on, I remember he was talking about moving in. He sent a picture of it. You have to look at his Facebook feed. It was funny. And on the counter of the new place, maybe it was the old place. I think it was the new place. There was 52 boxes of open pizza, and I was like, Chester. Man,
you're moving. It's a disaster.
Yeah, no, I thought maybe he had friends and family, but I was like, wow. I mean, there was it kind of shocked me actually.
Yeah, you got to get 5,200 calories, man.
I tell my body, that was like a 10,000 calorie day. People do those for eating challenges. I just do that when I'm normally active.
That's because you have so much muscle mass you have to feed. And I tell people that in exercise, like when I'm trying to do lifestyle stuff, whether it's to reduce cholesterol, whether it's to improve your diabetic state, exercise to build muscle is like a deposit in the bank that's going to earn interest later on down the road. And a lot of people I think there's still that old adage of doing cardio is the healthy way of exercise. And I'm like, no, we want you to actually lift weights. I want you to put on muscle mass because that's a deposit that's going to earn interest for the rest of your life. And in that return, that ROI on your health is just as good.
That's a really good way.
They're very similar amongst the data. They have different functions. I would certainly recommend both. But if you want Jeff, you talk about your particular situation with insulin sensitivity, glucose is going to be stored in muscle. The biggest storage depot of sugar in your blood is your muscle. So essentially adding your muscle, resistance training in itself or exercising in itself could have an insulin sensitizing effect for up to 72 hours post-workout. So obviously to lower your blood sugar, we release insulin, after a meal, but also those muscle contractions, they stimulate the glute floor translocation, sort of a similar method as insulin does to help lower that blood sugar. And again, if you're consistent with it, those effects can last 72 hours. So if you're consistent with it throughout the week, exercising 3-4 days a week, you can have an insulin sensitizing effect throughout the week. And that's going to be fabulous to combat, your insulin resistance, prediabetes type symptoms.
So if nutrition is the best way, is exercise your number 2 then?
Yeah, and I would certainly recommend both. You run a kingdom with a king and a queen, and nutrition and exercise are the king and the queen. You need both to have.
Boom. He had that one ready. I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't get ready. I stay ready.
They go hand in hand. I found this to be like a synergistic. If you start working out, you are like, well, I'm doing all this hard work. I'm going to eat better just by virtue of I don't want to ruin my workout or something, so to speak, right? And if you're getting benefits from your diet, it helps your results from the gym. And so they tend to travel in pairs if you're going to put the effort in one.
Yeah, one of my least favorite things ever is walking on the treadmill. So if I walk on the treadmill to burn like 300 calories, I'm not about to eat crap and just waste those 300 calories. I'm not having
so much mental effort to do it.
This is the most painful, worst thing I could do mentally is walk on the treadmill. I just hate it, Now, granted, I did get a TV, so it's much easier. So now I can actually watch TV. But before, I would just literally stare at a blank wall.
Oh God!
Walking on the treadmill, and it was painful. So
You're punishing yourself.
Yeah. So the second you do one, you realize, okay, I invested this time, I invested this effort to do exercise. I'm not going to blow it on nutrition. Or if you have a good nutrition diet, okay, I want to make the most of it. I gave myself the protein, I gave myself the energy. Let's put those to use. Let's create a resistance training plan. Let's create the anabolic signal to build muscle. Let's make sure those building blocks get put to use because they were so good. And again, they're going to have a synergistic effect on your health. And then from a subjective sort of how I feel perspective, you're going to feel better when you're pairing the two up combined. I agree 100%.
Yeah, one of the reasons I like exercise as well, I think it influences your diet, but then it also influences other conditions. Like it influences your type 2 diabetes state, and it influences your blood pressure, which we talked about in earlier episodes is a great way to improve your endothelial health and reduce your cardiovascular risk specifically. So you're getting like multiple bangs for your buck. So I always lean into exercise for those regards.
Oh, yeah, I can run through the list. We got your body composition improved. We have your insulin sensitivity. We have inflammation reduced. Exercise itself is a stimulus to increase your antioxidant capacity. So you're going to release antioxidants in your muscle, in your heart, and in your liver when you exercise. You also have your endothelial function improved. That shear stress, that hypoxia could trigger the release of growth factors. So you're going to have from remodeling your vasculature. That's great. Your mitochondrial function. So essentially what we have is mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. We want to have our fresh new powerhouses. So we're going to have mitochondrial biogenesis. We're going to build new ones. We're going to have mitophagy. We're going to recycle the old ones. So exercise is stimulus to say, hi, out with the old and with the new, and that's going to help us improve function. So we have a number of different methods, and also you mentioned the blood pressure. So a number of different mechanisms and methods in which exercise can help improve your health. So it's not random. There's mechanisms behind these various effects that are going to positively change your body that the stimulus of exercise is going to induce. So
one of the classic ones for HDL was always cardiovascular exercise, although I've seen it myself with HIIT training and resistance exercise too in my own N of 1 personal. So that's a unique thing to I see there's a lot of dyslipidemia out there. Like your LDL might be okay, but your HDL is low, or your triglycerides or a solitary elevation in those, different things like that. So yeah, I mean, you were going to decrease your LDL and decrease your triglycerides, increase your HDL. So it's huge. It's huge. I mean, like that list is massive, and that's not from, to do that exogenously, we have to take, there was 10 things you listed. We have to literally take 10 different medicines, just about, when you can do it all with one modality, and that's exercise. So I think that's fantastic.
I'd be interested, Jason. What was your take when you were a surgeon? I know that lifestyle, I was struck by how hard that was as a lifestyle. Do you find that physicians in that stressed environment that specifically doing trauma surgery, did you guys put yourselves at a back burner for those kind of things as a whole, or was it just absolutely individuals, or did you say everybody did?
I would say
majority
did.
I guess, yeah.
Yeah, just like out in the community, most people don't make it a priority. That's
true too. Most people don't, and then you put on a massive stress and a massive time constraint. It just made it harder for that. Yeah, was that actively talked about amongst each other, like our health as physicians? Why what do we do to combat that? Or are you just singular mindset? It's
mentioned in peer-reviewed journal articles. It's mentioned in you might get something from the American College of Surgeons, how to fight fatigue and burnout, and it's in lowering the cost of medical malpractice insurance. You have to do certain CME type things, but in everyday discourse among physicians, I didn't find it in my personal experience to be that a topic that was talked about much, unless it was to bemoan the fact that we weren't doing it, but it was more, you just get so hyped. I mean, and you keep your head down and you work, it's
You
kind
have to.
It's a
certain extent,
sadomasochistic
right?
lifestyle. Yeah. It's just insane.
And now that you're on the other side of that and not doing so much surgery, have you found it difficult to put in because you didn't have those habits, or have you found it easy now because you theoretically have more time, or have you found other things to fill your time, or what does that
probably
look like?
the first one difficult because I didn't have the habits.
Yeah.
Yeah. And and there's no stress to push you. Like it was, I think about people doing shift work and just you're trading, the old expression, I'm trading my health for my wealth. Or, I'm not saying that somebody would get wealthy necessarily doing that, but it's a job that produces income for your family. But I mean, you're burning yourself at both ends. It's insane.
It's interesting. Yeah. I think for me, the nutrition was really tough, or going back to because I don't have those habits built now, which I think as I've started to do more GLPs, I've realized that there was a whole subset of patients who I maybe just didn't fully understand, and how significant of a roadblock and how significant of a whatever habits there were to overcome for weight loss and anti-inflammatory. And it's been eye-opening for me.
If you really want to go down the rabbit hole, or you really want to think about this holistically, my thought is that you should it begins at home in the family unit. And I've had that's been a bitter pill to swallow, because then I started thinking about, okay, so like trying now to get my kids to eat healthy now that I'm homeworn, and it's not that Morgan wasn't, and she was, but I mean, it's been tough because I when they were super young, at least me personally, I don't think I did a lot of that. And I started to think about when we were kids, Jeff, it was always like, at dinner you had Tahitian treat, you had Sprite, you had whatever, and you always had dessert, always. And that was something that we were taught early on. And then when I got in a relationship with Morgan, she was like, "What? You eat dessert after?" I'm like, "Yeah, doesn't everybody?" Like, I don't
She doesn't?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, right. So it's weird, right? And so
I eat it first now,
right? So I think it's like these habits that you build, and then you have to. So starting early and staying adherent to them are important. And you described that in your own life, in my life, and we talked about Chester having done these healthy habits from, or even an early age. He had interest in them, but I mean, he's been doing them for years and years now. I think habit trumps motivation every time.
Yeah, and it's really hard to create that habit. I would say if you bring that up, that my kids tend to follow suit with what is easier for me. Exercise. They're all very, very active, and I would say we are not the most nutritious consumers of food. If we had to put that emphasis on one, for sure, it's the exercise that wins out, and that, I guess, that comes from me and Stacy being very. That's just our habit. It's just part of our lifestyle. There,
It's a good habit, though.
It's a great habit, but I'm just thinking, like, they go to the gym because we own a gym, so they can't get away from it. I'm not forcing the workout.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, not maybe the lifestyle that we grew up doing, but they're just there. And if there's some overlap with where they have to hang out with us at the office, they're hanging out with me at the office at the gym, right? So they inevitably is just seeping into their lifestyle. And my oldest now works there full time, and
Okay.
So yeah, it's interesting to see those habits and those lifestyle factors start from an early age, and that's probably a good motivator for our patients, right? Maybe leaning into this and saying, like, you can do these things for your cholesterol management, you can do these things for your diabetes, you can do these things for this, but also lean into that role they serve as a parent to help motivate them to do those lifestyle changes as well. Not only is it going to help improve their cholesterol, but it's also going to help improve the life span and healthy lifestyle of their children.
Yeah, and I like the idea of discussing it, making it fun to talk about. It'd be interesting. I've always had this thought of, like, it'd be really cool to have a Midtown like which is what you have a multidisciplinary clinic, and it's really a good model. But then it'd be neat to add in a nutritional aspect to that, right? If you had somebody that was down there cooking, teaching people how to do and making it fun for the community.
It's been the toughest for us to find. We have a girl there now, and it's not easy. But it's funny, like you say that. I tell people that's one of the biggest things about coming down to our gym is like you hang out there and you're not hanging out with maybe people who are like, hey, let's go to the bar afterwards, or hey, let's go do this. They're like, hey, you want to do an extra set, or hey, we should come meet tomorrow and do yoga, or hey, we should, so that the conversation changes. It was interesting. Like today, my oldest came in, I was in the sauna and she came in and we were sitting there and I was listening to a podcast on ApoB and she's like, what are we doing? And I was like, oh, I'm listening to the differences between Repatha and the this, that, and the other she's like, oh God, but little does she know that lifestyle is seeping in.
Exactly.
And a little bit. And I think that happens with your patients. So that's probably one of the biggest things I've seen at our clinic is just the community that it builds. Like if you're hanging out with someone like Chester, who you don't have to necessarily teach and preach and instruct, you're just doing it, and they learn just as your kids learn by you doing it. You as cohorts and as peers will learn by doing it. And you're like, hey, you're not going to go to Guthrie's afterwards. And I'm like, no, I don't want to ruin my workout. You're like, so that gets the other person to do the same thing, and that begets more wins for everybody.
That's 100%. So it's all about that community and being around like-minded, or if you don't like the situation you are in life, go be around people that are in the situation you want to. Like just having to get on the podcast with Chester, looking at his social media feed, so make me think, man, I need to get in better shape. And but that's a good pressure to have. I don't mean it isn't. You don't want to take it to an extreme where you're feeling less than people, but I mean, like just surround yourself with people that are in that healthy mindset. You're right. It's so important.
I don't think, and I always take this, like nobody ahead of you is beating you down. Like people ahead of you are always helping you come up, right? If someone's pulling you down, it's probably because they're below you and they're uncomfortable, right? So I've never been to a gym and seen someone like a Chester who physique wise looks much different in a better sense than me, making me feel uncomfortable. It's always the person on the other end, right? So I think when you foster that, you get a much different, and I don't see that at our gym space at all. It's more like, yeah, come along, let's do it. Let's do an extra lap or whatever it is. I see that to be much more the mindset of those individuals.
And that's with successful people in life too. Like people, it's interesting. Like if you spent your life dedicated to exercise science, you have a PhD in it, and you are a beast of a dude. I'm talking about Chester, and you have this wealth of information. I don't find that, as a rule, those people want to keep the information all to themselves. On the contrary, if you're interested, those people tend to give freely of their information. It's the same concept. It's all a continuum. But we get in our heads where we get, I think it's something that we create inside of ourselves. And if you were to find somebody like that was acting negatively, you're right. It's usually because they're below you. What are some other lifestyle factors besides those two to Chester to kind of limit oxidative stress? Because that seems to be one of the, obviously that's the genesis for endothelial injury, which then makes the cholesterol a problem.
We have a number of different things. You have, your environment, your pollution, your general stress level. But I want to circle back because I feel like social circle is so important. Like if you look at what are the biggest obstacles, like I've had this interest since I was a little kid, but in terms of when it's been hardest to stick to, it's been periods where my social circle maybe did not align with my goals, or they were pulling me in different directions, whether it was high school, like, hey, let's go eat Wendy's, Friday nights, or college, let's go drink. Like that's the biggest peer pressure you feel. The different people who you surround yourself with, like they're going to rub off on you and they're going to change your behaviors as much as you strive to be kind of independent and in your own world and goal focused. Just inevitably their energy and their behaviors are going to
100%
change your lifestyle a little bit, regardless of how dedicated or how focused you are. So you need to be hyper cognizant of who you surround yourself with. And I'm not sure, how often you talk about like goals and aspirations with your social circle or surrounding crowd, but I feel like those conversations should be had. And if you have similar goals as someone and you align with them, it's going to be conducive to a better connection between you guys, and then improved health as well, both physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, all that good stuff.
I can't help. We can't harp on this enough, honestly. And I know this is not the sole focus, but that's so huge. You're the sum of the 5 people you hang around the most, or it's all kind of the same. You're saying the same stuff. It's absolutely true. If you wanted to be a great investor, you'd hang out with Warren Buffett if you could. I mean, or you wouldn't go hang out with the poor guy down the street that spent all his money on garbage or whatever. Same thing in this arena too. I totally agree. What would you do? And if you were looking at dietary interventions and you wanted to talk to your patients about that, or anybody for that matter, what specific dietary changes, Chester, would you advocate?
So there's not one
to improve lipids.
There's not one diet that's like, okay, this is the best diet or this is the worst diet. There's essentially just different qualities of a diet that's going to be sort of anti-atherosclerotic and then pro-atherosclerotic. So qualities of an anti-atherosclerotic, so we're talking about reducing disease risk, filled with antioxidants, filled with vegetables, filled with fruits, berries. If we're going to get into specifics, berries are great. Your blueberries, your blackberries, your raspberries, apples are great. Vegetables, you want to focus on your dark leafy green vegetables, your really rich reds, red bell pepper, tomato. Tomato, it's interesting because you have to make sure you cook it. Cooking it will help sort of change the chemical composition of the tomato skin to make the lycopene, the antioxidant, more bioavailable, more accessible. And then did I say purples? Your purple grapes. I recently discovered beets. Jeff said they ain't shit, but I think they're absolutely.
My wife loves them.
I swear they're good. Not the canned beets, but some fresh beets with a little salt and pepper. Now, granted, I'm changing, celery for beets, so I'm starting with a pretty low floor, and I'm going to beets. So it's not like celery is the most delicious food in the world.
I love celery, actually. I'll trade you. You can have all my beets. I'll take your celery.
But certain dietary interventions, fiber-rich food, omega-3, a little CoQ10, whole foods as well. You want to sort of avoid the processed foods. And there's a lot of literature about, do animal proteins cause deleterious health effects? Do animal proteins, are they associated with cardiovascular disease risk? The answer is no. If you have a leaner source of protein, if you're going to have your bacon and your sausage. I remember my dad's doctor told him to go keto, and he kind of just said, okay, high fat. So he was slamming like sausage and bacon and cheese. That was delicious. Keto. Yeah, it's delicious, but it's not exactly good in terms of your measures. So you want your leaner proteins if you're going to have your fats, your oils and your nut butters and things like that. And peanut butter is fabulous.
I do love a good nut butter.
Yeah, your almond butter, cashew butter, a little sea salt on those.
Heck yeah.
Health is just knowing which foods are delicious. I feel like that's what really helps kind of form those good nutrition.
That's so true. That's huge.
Around and finding out,
let me relay this to you that it was interesting that 6 to 12% loss in weight, statistically significantly compared to controls who did not, statistically significantly reduced ApoB concentrations. Additionally, quote, in non-weight loss dietary comparisons, the Mediterranean diet was most closely associated with lower plasma ApoB. That was interesting. So your advice is sound. You're going to literally impact atherogenic particles that are in the bloodstream and lower your cardiovascular risk literally by decreasing ApoB, for instance. And then not to mention, with those delicious beets, increasing your nitric oxide, your endothelial health. Jeff, you're missing out.
Just do you eat beets?
Oh, yeah.
No, you don't.
Once a week. No, I don't.
We'll find out. I'll be up there in South Carolina soon.
That's right.
I'm going to get proof.
I'm going to go to the store. You know what? Before you come, I'm going to buy a whole mess of beets.
Stacy, I love you.
Yeah, we're going to eat them raw. So what things should we avoid? Is it pretty obvious?
So you want to avoid your refined carbohydrates. Essentially, those are processed carbohydrates, your simple sugars. Now, if you're an athlete and you're exercising and move around, sugar is okay, Gatorade's okay. But if you're sedentary, you shouldn't be slamming sugar. Also, refined carbohydrates are technically carbohydrates that are processed where the nutrients have been removed. The good news is we sort of live in a society where a lot of things are enriched. Even your white rice is enriched with, certain nutrients and things like that. But in general, you want to avoid those processed foods. You want to avoid trans fat. Those would be, kind of really fattier animal proteins, but also baked goods, processed goods, excess sodium. And at what point does sodium become excess? Because you need salt to survive and function. Similarly, you need cholesterol to survive and function. But sodium would be in excess if it starts to increase your blood pressure. So if that's the case, then you're probably pounding a little bit too much sodium. And then diets that are deficient or void or insufficient of minerals, vitamins, and fiber, those would be not very advantageous to your health. And again, I think that is just sort of experimenting, mess around and find out, if you will, in terms of which vegetables you like. For example, I hated avocados my whole life. It was kind of like green eggs and ham, where I just was like avoiding avocados. I thought they were the most overrated food. And then I finally kind of had avocados, mixed them up with some chicken and rice and also some fenugreek seed, which is absolutely fabulous. And then I fell in love with avocado. So you have fenugreek and avocado in a chicken and rice. It makes your chicken and rice come to life in terms of the flavor palette, and they're two functional foods. They're going to provide more benefits beyond just the nutritional value. They're going to have more health benefits, if you will. And they did a whole bunch of research on sort of what was the best food to lower your LDL, and avocados was pretty much number one on the list. So it's an incredible food. So just experimenting and finding out which foods and which seasonings, herbs, and spices you like, that's going to be incredibly advantageous to develop those positive habits and then stick with them consistently. So I don't even look at like, I'm on a diet. I just enjoy eating when I eat, and I can very easily eat 5,200 calories a day because my food is so delicious. And that's just kind of trial and error. You're going to make some dishes and you're not going to like them, and you're going to maybe want to throw them out or something, or have to power through them if you don't like to waste food. But eventually you're going to find the recipes and the foods that you like and then agree with you and make your body feel good. And it's going to be the best thing you could do.
And that's what I tell my patients. I think the big takeaway from this I want to tell people is that lifestyle modifications can make significant improvements, and working with somebody and making the changes will bear fruit as significantly, or can potentially make significantly as
if not more.
If not more. And so there's some specific strategies, but just don't. I think as doctors we forget that, and we ourselves are guilty of that. But I always just tell my patients, let's make sure that you think about the lifestyle. We spend a lot of time going through the pharmaceutical, but lifestyle can make just as big a difference.
Absolutely.
All right, Jason. Another one's in the books, brother.
Yeah, I agree. It's good seeing you guys again.
And then I think we'll have something to report for next one, because I'll be up there in Myrtle Beach, and I'm going to make you cold plunge. I'm going to make you sauna. Woo! Another thing that's great for your cardiovascular health. And then I'm going to take Jason on a magic carpet breath ride. We're going to take him down some breath work exercises, and you can see you can get that experience as well.
Nice. We'll report back to you with our findings, Dr. Sokolowski. Good seeing you guys.
All right, guys.
Until next time.
There y'all.
See you.